Amina, thank you, Pastor Pat. Welcome, everybody. Praise the name. We thank God for this opportunity again to be able to share and to have a corporate prayer. Today we'll still continue with the story of Balaam, but I'll be focusing on a subject of compromise. Not compromise, compromise has got many meanings, that word compromise. There is compromise, the other positive meaning of when you choose to say lower your standards so that you can reach an amicable settlement, amicable resolution, amicable understanding. That is the positive compromise. Today, I'm really talking about the word compromise from the Sorry, I went for like a second or two. I think my acting up, but the emphasis is I'll be sharing about compromise, but in the negative context of, compromise, meaning where you lower your standards, you lower your morals, you lower your beliefs so that you can fit in with the world, kind of. That is what I'll be focusing on today. So the story of Balaam, we shared last time on Monday on how Balaam is hired by Balak so that he can Sorry, my network. Yeah, I've changed. I'm changing. Let me change to a backup. So I was just going over the story of Balaam, a prophet hired to curse the children of Israel on behalf of the Moabite king, Balak, and he accepts to do it for a fee. He's promised money, gold, silver, if he can successfully curse the children of Israel. And instead, because the presence of the Lord was upon the children of Israel, whenever he opened his mouth to curse, it turned into a blessing. And he did it 5 times, but still he did not succeed to pronounce a curse. Instead, whenever he would open his mouth, he kept on heaping blessing after blessing upon the children of Israel. Now, before, of course, clearly you can see that Balaam was compromised. Compromised, why? Because he wanted money, but that is not what I want us to talk about today. Still, on the story of Balaam and Balak, I mentioned last time that when the Lord takes you out of Egypt, he takes you out of the land of bondage, he takes you out of the land of unbelief, he takes you out of slavery, out of the land of religion, and he delivers you. A season, you might go through a season of the desert, a season of lack, a season of want. And then when the Lord finally delivers you to your promised land, which is your season of taking your possession, the enemy sees it. He sees it from afar. When you look at this story, the Bible says that when the children of Israel were on the plains of the land of the Moabites saw it and they became distressed. They became fearful because they had seen what the Israelites had done to their neighbors. They had beaten the Canaanites, they had beaten the Amorites, and now they were coming onto their land. They could see it from afar. Now, let me just put some emphasis here that when the Lord is giving you your possessions, when the Lord is taking you out of the desert into your promised land, when I talk about the promised land, really, I'm talking about a season in your life, a season of victory, a season of success, a season of taking the possessions, the promises of the Lord upon your life. When the Lord is doing that, the enemy can see it, and he sees it from afar. That is number one. And number two, when he sees it, the enemy will do everything possible to try and defeat, to try and frustrate you from actually achieving that which the Lord wants to give, wants you to take. And then number three, when the enemy is at it, he will not spare anything. Here in this story, this is what the Bible says, that Balak sat with his elders and they hired this prophet from a far off land, and they promised him gold and silver. That's what the enemy does. They will go as far as Pemba, is it where, Mombasa, Tanzania, to hire diviners, to hire sorcerers, to hire witches, to try and bring you down. And then number four, when the enemy is at it, he does not give up. He doesn't give up. The Bible says that the man, first of all, wait a minute, let me first go back a little concerning him not sparing anything. The Bible says that for Balaam to pronounce the curse, he demanded that altars be set up. You know, at first he demanded for 7 altars, and on each altar they slaughtered an ox and a ram. And then on the second altar, then the second time they did again 7 altars, and on each an ox and a ram. When you count in total, those were 28 animals slaughtered for one occasion to bring down the children of Israel. That is the expense the enemy will go to try and frustrate you from taking your possession. I need you to listen to me carefully. The enemy he doesn't give up. That is now my number 4. He does not give up. When he sets out to frustrate you, he does not give up. The Bible says in this story, Balak asks Balaam to curse. The first time, it turns into a blessing. The second time, the third, up to the 5th time. You can imagine. You'd imagine that he would have given up on the first time, but he didn't. He still demanded that they try. Let's go to the other hill. Let's go to the other place where you won't be seeing them. Now let's move up to maybe this other place. And they kept on doing all the tricks that they would. So the prophet would pronounce the curse, but it fails. Now, the story does not end there. And that's where I want us to start from, the issue of compromise. Let's read chapter 25 of Numbers. What I just shared is from chapter 22, 23, and 24 of the book of Numbers. Now, I need us for this sharing this evening to read from chapter 25 of Numbers, starting from verse 1. This is what the Bible says. And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab, and they called the people unto the sacrifices of their gods. And the people did it and bowed down to their gods. And Israel joined himself unto Baal-peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel. Verse 4. And the Lord said to Moses, take all the heads of the people and hang them up before the Lord against the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may be turned away from Israel. Verse 5. And Moses said unto the judges of Israel, slay you every one his men who were joined unto Baal-peor. Verse 6. And behold, one of the children of Israel came and brought unto his brethren a Midianitish woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel, who were weeping before the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. Verse 7. And when Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it, he rose up from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand, verse 8, and he went after the man of Israel into the tent and thrust both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through her belly. So the plague was stayed from the children of Israel. And those who died in the plague were 24,000. You heard that. 24,000 people died of a plague. Why? Because the children of Israel had turned they had turned to whoredom and worshiping Baal and eating food that had been sacrificed to the idols. Praise the name of the Lord. The subject today really is compromise. Now, this is how the story goes. The fifth time when Balaam fails to pronounce a curse, he gives advice to Balak. He tells him, you know what? These people, you can't manage them, but you can find a way. There is a way we can do it. Trap them, okay? Cause them to sin against their God. Send to them your daughters. Let them entice them. Let them seduce them. Let them trap them. They will, on their own, get into whoredom. They will start worshiping Baal. And in so doing, their own God is going to punish them. And indeed, that is what happened. What the Moabites did, the Bible says they sent the Moabites together with the Midianites. Okay, now that's the other thing. The enemy will even go to the extent of finding allies to bring you down. Now, we take things for granted, by the way, children of God take things for granted. But the people in the world know it. They will even go, even if somebody is their enemy, provided they can help him, they can help them to bring you down. They can turn them into their allies. Because when you read the history, the Bible actually says Moab and Midian were rivals. They were not friendly nations. But on this one occasion, when they were facing this common enemy, Israel, they formed an alliance. They formed an alliance. And now, following the advice given to them by Balaam, they send a trap. They send a stumbling block. When you read parts of the Bible, they're actually called a stumbling block. They sent a stumbling block. And what was the stumbling block? Whoredom, women, okay, food, you know. They sent things that we call the things of the world, the things of the flesh. That's what they sent down to the children of Israel. Nobody had to curse them. Cursing them became unnecessary. They themselves were trapped. They got enticed. They were seduced by these things. On their own accord, they ended up sinning against God. They ended up turning against God. Remember, the curse could not hold because these people's hearts were towards God. They were facing God. Their hearts were unto God. Okay, because that is what the Bible says. Balaam tells Balak that, you know what, these people, their God does not see any sin in their midst, and their God is in their midst, and the shout of a king is in their midst. You can't manage them. So anyway, let's come back now to what actually happens. On their own accord, because of allowing to be compromised, they sin against God, and God rains down a plague. God sends a plague because of the transgression of the children of Israel, a people that had been justified, a people whom we see in the previous chapter as a people who had no sin in their midst. Now, I just want to bring this discussion to what is happening in our lives today. Remember, I'm talking about God delivering you to take your possessions. Many times when God is taking us to that higher place, that higher ground, we actually forget that we are a nation at war. We forget that the enemy is watching and that the enemy wants a bit of that victory. Not just a bit. Actually, he does not want us to succeed. That is the truth. He does not want to see you move from the desert into that palace. He doesn't want to see you move from the desert into that place of joy, place of peace. He doesn't want. It has never been, and it will never be his wish. Because, I mean, this is what Jesus says. The thief comes but to kill, to steal, and to destroy. That is his agenda. He doesn't bring anything good. Praise the name of the Lord. Now, I'm talking about compromise. You realize that the children of Israel, when the enemy comes after them this time around, he tries the curse and it fails. So he comes this time around and he's dressed up, okay? He is so dressed up. And by the way, that is what happens in real life. When the enemy is coming to attack you, many times he comes dressed up. You know, it will be a deal, a very colorful deal. They'll tell you, you know what, just take the money. You will relax now. Your children will go to school. You'll build the house. You'll even buy yourself a car that you've been dreaming about. You know, there's nothing bad. There's nothing wrong with you taking this deal. Meanwhile, it is a bribe and you also know it. Okay, they will send you things that look innocent, by the way. Many, they will actually look very innocent on the top. But the problem is, along the way, it is a trap. You get enticed, you get seduced, and before you know it, okay, before you know it, your heart has turned against God. There's something I wanted to talk about the company that we keep. You realize that they just sent these women into the camp. These women were thrust into the camp, okay? The Moabite and Midian, the Bible says the Midianites and Moabites girls were sent into the camp. Now, my question to you today is, what kind of company, what kind of people do you surround yourself with? Okay, are they the kind of people who will challenge you to walk in the fear of the Lord? Are they the kind of people who will challenge you to walk a righteous life? Are they the kind of people who will challenge you to walk a holy life? Or they're the kind of people who will cause you to compromise a bit, you know, telling you, you know what, I mean, you need to fit in. Come on, drink some. You need to fit in. You know, how can you just, you know, drink water? Yeah, my friends used to tease me, my workplace friends. They used to say, hey, you drink soda, you're bringing flies here. You know, drink some alcohol, you know. Many times it comes like something that is innocent, like they're really concerned about you. But the long and short of it, before you know it, they have turned your heart. Those things have turned your heart against God. I'm really talking about compromise. There are things we do, the music that you listen to, you know, the devil sends those things, by the way. Many of those things, by the way, are actually traps. They are stumbling blocks that have been set up by the enemy to bring us down. But on the top, they look very, very innocent. I'm just imagining these girls walking into the camp and these children of Israel thinking, oh, these foreigners have welcomed us onto their land, you know. And before they knew it, these women had them literally eating from their palms. They began eating food that was sacrificed to the idols. They even began worshiping Baal. They turned against God. I don't think it started off like boom at a go. It must have been gradual. First, they started talking to them, spending time with them. Before they knew it, they started prostituting with them. Before they knew it, they started going to the orgies, you know, those orgies, worshiping Baal, you know, having those parties, dancing, eating. And before they knew it, their hearts had totally left the way that they had known, the way of their fathers. And now they were worshiping Baal. We see that a lot in our midst. I know so many people that have professed to be born again, and you know, it's a workplace party, you know, because they want to fit in. You know, they will also swing a glass of whiskey. You know, I want to fit in. Otherwise, if I take just the water, I'll seem like, you know, I'm naive. I do not know the times. You know, but before you know it, you get drunk, and one thing leads to another. Okay. things, there are many things that we do. You want to fit in, you know, you lower your standard. You actually know God's expectation of you, but because of the world, because of the people that are around you, you want to fit in. You want to prove to them that you're also happening. You know, you're not backward, you're not conservative. So you lower your standard. You lower your standard, and then you allow for them to determine, you know, the kind of conversations that you'll have, the kind of music that you listen to, you know, they determine, you allow them to determine your environment, okay? You find yourself hanging out to gossip as opposed to maybe like showing up for this phone call, you know, you find yourself doing things which you actually know this is not appropriate. It doesn't help me. But like I said, your problem is you want to fit in. So you lower your standard. That is what happened to the children of Israel. Like I said, they come to this foreign land. These women, they befriend them, okay? I'm really sure this is what must have happened. The women befriend them, you know, they seduce them. It must have been like gradual. And before they knew it, they were gone. And what happens to them? Death. A people who had been promised to go into a land that flows with milk and honey. Okay, a people who had been promised that they would take possessions, beautiful land that this, you know, the spies had brought back word to say that the land there is good land. You know, the plants thrive, they give off good fruit. It is a good land, you know. These are the people we are talking about. And they get to this valley of Shittim, and this is where they get destroyed. The Bible says 24,000 people died of a plague because they allowed to be compromised in a foreign land, compromised by things which ordinarily would seem like innocent things. Food, women, you know, praise the name of the Lord. I just want to continue. The Bible in Psalms, chapter 18. I need us to read there to encourage us. Yeah, chapter 18 of Psalms. This is what it says when you start from verse 32. It says that it is God who guards me with strength and makes my way perfect. He makes my feet like hinds' feet and sets me upon my high places. Then, verse 34, he says, he teaches my hands to war so that a bow of steel is broken by my arms. And verse 35, you have also given me the shield of your salvation, and your right hand has held me up, and your gentleness has made me great. And then verse 36, this is where I'm going to stop. You have enlarged my steps under me, that my feet did not slip. This was David. What is evident is that as we walk in this life, temptation will come. Circumstances that may cause you to compromise, okay, will come your way. You will encounter those things. You will encounter those tumbling blocks. You will encounter those traps. But this is what David says. He says that it is God who guards him with strength, and he makes his way perfect. And he says it's God who makes his feet like hinds' feet and sets him upon high places. It is God who teaches my hands to war so that a bar of steel is broken. You know? Generally, my point here is that on our own, we cannot overcome those challenges. On our own, using our strength, using our ability, using our knowledge, our understanding, we cannot overcome those challenges. Rather, it is God. We need strength from above. We need strength. We need God. By the way, God, from this psalm, you see that God is in the business of skilling us. He says he teaches my hands to war so that he's even able to break a bow of steel, a bow of steel. He's able to break it. He gives him strength. He teaches him how to fight. It is a journey. It is a struggle. Let me call it that way, the way the NRM calls it. It's a struggle, okay? But now, when I use the word struggle, please take it from this context, that it is not, it's not a roller coaster ride. It's not, smooth riding. You will encounter those things. You will encounter the world because you're actually going through the world. You will meet people who will want you to lower your standard. They will even tease you and bully you. They will even say things that will cause you to feel embarrassed, and make you to want to lower your standard. You will encounter those things, but it is God who gives you the strength, and then it is God who gives you the skill, how to navigate those stumbling blocks, how to navigate those traps. It is God who gives you that ability. He says, when you read verse 36, that you have enlarged my steps under me, that my feet did not slip. Falling, actually, temptation causes us to fall. Now, David here is using actually that imagery and says that God enlarges my steps so that I am not, I stand firm on the ground. I'm not able to sleep. Even when I encounter temptation, even when I encounter stumbling blocks and traps, he helps me to stand. In other words, he empowers me. He gives me ability. Praise the name of the Lord. And when you read Hebrews, in Hebrews chapter 4, we just read Psalms chapter 18, verse 32 to 36. But just I want to conclude so that we can pray. When you read Hebrews chapter 4, it talks about Jesus, the high priest, starting from praise the name of the Lord. I want us to read this together. When you read Hebrews, the book of Hebrews chapter 4 talks about Jesus. And he says that we have a high priest who has also been tempted, okay? But even after he was tempted, he did not fall. But then he concludes that verse and this by saying, let's read, okay, from verse 15 to verse 16 of Hebrews chapter 4. Sorry, I was in Hebrews chapter 5. That's why I couldn't see that verse. It's chapter 4, verse 15 to verse 16. I'm just trying to encourage us. I'm bringing a word of encouragement. And I'm saying, do not allow it to be compromised. You will encounter those circumstances. You will, because that is the enemy's, one of the skill, one of the ways, one of the yes, the plans of the enemy to bring you down. He will want you to compromise. He will bring you stumbling blocks. He will bring you traps. It will come your way, especially when the Lord is now taking you into your promised land, when the Lord is getting you out of the desert and placing you in that place where he has promised you. The enemy will come after you with traps. Praise the name of the Lord. But this is what the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 4 from verse 15. It says, for we have not a high priest who cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Okay, now I want to place emphasis here in verse 16. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain grace and find grace to help in time of need. Praise the name of the Lord. temptation. This one, when I talk about compromise, we really talking about temptation. The Bible here in Hebrews chapter 4 says that we have a high priest, and that high priest is Jesus Christ, that he was actually tempted. Jesus was tempted in many ways, okay? He was tempted, but he still was able to stand. He remained sinless, okay, despite the many temptations that came his way. And this is what he's encouraging us, the writer of Hebrews. He says, but let us come, therefore, boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and we may find grace for help in time of need. We need to ask God to grant us the grace. We need to ask God for mercy. We need to ask God to grant us grace that we may be able to withstand these traps, that we may be able to stand, that we will not be compromised. I just emphasize that it is not your ability as an individual, it is not your strength as an individual, but rather you need the strength from on high. And that strength here, he says, it is grace, the grace of God. We need to ask for it, not just today after we have spoken here, but make it a lifestyle. Do so continually, that you'll overcome compromise, that you'll be able to take your position, that you lead a successful life, and that you will stand righteous and holy before the eyes of the Lord. Praise the name of the Lord. Allow me end here, and let me ask Pastor Paul to take over as we get into prayer.